Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Shivali and you're watching Swiftly Shivali, a place for developers to learn, grow, and make an impact on their careers. And today we're talking about technical interviews for software engineers. The interview process typically starts off with a candidate applying for a position and submitting their resume, crafting a well-structured resume that really stands out amongst your peers is a topic in and of itself. Please subscribe to my channel if you would like to see a video solely dedicated to that. This video, however, will focus on what happens after your resume has already been selected and you're invited on site for a technical round or you are selected for a technical phone screen. So whether the interviewer asks you about data structures, algorithms, or systems design, there's one crucial skill that you will always be assessed on, and that is communication. It's so crucial in technical interviews that I am dedicating this video on what makes a candidate a good communicator versus what makes them a very poor communicator. Communication across the board is so important during technical interviews, and it's oftentimes forgotten about because as a software engineer, you might be so focused on the hard skills, such as reversing a linked list or implementing a binary search tree, that we forget about communicating our thought process on how we have actually accomplished these tasks. And it's important to remember that if the interviewer is unable to interpret your solution or is unable to follow your thought process on how you actually got there, then none of that matters. It really doesn't matter if you're very technically strong, but you are unable to explain your solution to anybody, or if nobody's able to work with you because you're not communicating and you're not talking about how you've reached certain conclusions. So today I want to reveal to you what interviewers actually look at when they refer to communication. What are their criteria and what makes a very strong candidate stand out from a weaker candidate? What communication errors can you make and potentially lose a job because of this, because of a communication mishap? And so we will look at one candidate who is very weak and one candidate who is very strong. So let's jump right in. So communication is very broad and includes written communication, verbal communication, presentation skills, data visualization, asking clarifying questions, listening, etc. But the two main things that interviewers really look at is, can the candidate get their point across and can they accurately interpret the question posed to them? So from a candidate's point of view, what does this really look like? So a weak candidate will, one, not listen and not ask any clarifying questions. They'll just take the prompt that's given to them and just run with it. And oftentimes this will lead them to a very sticky situation where they've actually solved the wrong problem. And they never asked any questions about the requirements, or they're not listening to the interviewer who's trying to guide them into the right path. Oftentimes, interviewers assume that a candidate has memorized a certain algorithm and they're just trying to fit this problem into that algorithm. And they're just trying to solve it that way. And that is not the intent for interview questions at all. It's really intended that the candidate is able to problem solve on the spot and is able to kind of solve any problem that's given to them. And understanding that thought process is so important. And if the candidate never asks any questions, then there's a very high chance that they are solving the wrong problem. So a second trait of a candidate that could be rejected is that the candidate is incapable of explaining a topic that they should be familiar with. So it says that you are very familiar with building apps in Swift, and so we ask you about a very basic topic and you're unable to explain that, but it seems like you know how it works because you've written applications in this language before and you have used this technology before, but if you're unable to explain it back, that's kind of a red flag for the interviewer. Number 3 is that a candidate is unable to explain their intent even after a lot of encouragement from the interviewer. So a lot of times we understand that candidates are nervous and they may clam up or they might be thinking a lot in their head. So a lot of times the interviewer will, give the candidate some time to warm up, will chat a little bit, talk about their resume, talk about the problem, and if the candidate is just not responsive or not able to explain anything even after that, that is a little bit of a red flag. A lot of times interviewers will say, okay, so explain your thought process, or how did you reach this conclusion, or could you explain to me what this variable does? If the candidate is unable to do that or they're reluctant to speak up, that's a huge red flag. So number 4 is that the interviewer is unable to interpret the candidate's code. So the code is very, messy, and it's not really headed in the right direction of the project, and the candidate's not able to say why the code is behaving this way and why they chose that approach in the first place. And then number 5 is that the candidate needs frequent reframing of the problem. They don't know where to begin, and after the interviewer has explained it to them in 2 or 3 or 4 different ways, the candidate is still confused about the problem and they're just not grasping it. So those are the 5 red flags for candidate communication issues. And this is because communication is used every single day, whether that's communicating with your manager or communicating with the product team or the test engineering team. You need to be able to explain your thoughts and what you're doing currently and what you're working on currently. Now let's take a look at the opposite side. Let's examine a candidate who goes above and beyond to communicate. And this is a candidate that we should all strive to be. So number 1 is that the candidate asks a lot of good clarifying questions. This candidate is able to describe an approach at a very high level, and then they're also able to describe how the code works. And oftentimes they will do this unprompted, and that is great because they are, as they're writing the code, they're able to talk through it. And they're able to communicate complex topics even to a layperson. And a lot of this includes gauging your audience. So suppose you're very highly skilled in a particular topic, but perhaps the interviewer is not. You should be able to explain that topic to them and say, hey, I worked on this on my last project. I know you guys are working on using this technology at your current company, but this is how it works, and I think it would be a good fit. Or I think it's a good fit for this problem. And explaining why and being able to convince somebody else is a skill in and of itself. So number 2 is that the candidate describes a time where the communication has influenced their decision. So they can say, based on this assumption that we spoke about at the beginning of the problem, that's why I am implementing my code this way. So they will go back and they will reference why they made that decision and when that assumption was communicated to them. And I think that's very important because sometimes the other person might not know why you're assuming this, or there could have been some misunderstanding at that point. And by bringing up a point in like a time in reference, then the interviewer could clarify themselves, or it just kind of reassures that everybody is on the same page. And then number 3 is that a candidate frequently checks in with the interviewer to make sure that they're understanding the problem correctly and that the interviewer is also understanding what is being explained to them. And this is especially important when a problem is very complex and the concept is very complex. And so if there is any misunderstanding, they're able to unpack that and explain it in a different, maybe use a different set of words or a different example so that the interviewer is able to understand their thought process. And it's okay even if they take a few moments to maybe like gather their thoughts or come up with a different example. I think that's totally fine and that's actually encouraged. So if you find yourself doing that, just remember that it's okay to take a moment to pause and to rephrase your sentences or rephrase your example. So I hope that the case studies of two different candidates, one with very weak communication skills and one with very strong communication skills, was useful to you and you were able to see the difference in what interviewers really look for and what they're really assessing you against. A few ways to practice this would be to practice whiteboarding problems with possibly a friend or maybe even recording yourself so that you're able to hear yourself out loud as you're talking through a problem. And that's very important because oftentimes when you are whiteboarding or you are trying to solve a specific problem, a lot of it is like in your head and it's often hard to talk and do that at the same time. So that's a skill that really should be practiced. I wish you guys all the best on your journey and in your interview process, and let me know how it's going in the comments below. Let me know if you've gotten feedback that you need to communicate better and you weren't sure what that meant. I hope this is able to help you clarify some of that. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be creating more interview tips and tricks, what interviewers are really looking for in terms of other skills. You know, in addition to communication, interviewers also look for collaboration, they look for problem solving, they look for empathy and ownership, they look for code fluency, of course, the hard skills such as algorithms, data structures, core CS concepts, systems designs. There's a lot that makes a strong software engineer, and if you'd like to see videos on those topics, let me know, subscribe to my channel, and I'll be more than happy to create those for you.